So you were there in television right at its birthing, so to speak.
Just one psych in a radio studio. That's it.
How would you say that it's changed over all this period? For the better, for the worse, or
Um, well, the news, of course, has come great things, and the sports have come great things. But when you're trying to find the lowest common denominator, I think somewhere there is room for an art channel. I know A&E and some, but there's got to be. There isn't even a dance channel. Whatever happened to all those variety channels? I said, get that other Comedy Central that somebody has buried somewhere, and all the stuff that they have cut out of the Sid Caesar show and the whatever, put that stuff on dancers. That's the only record they have. They can't, there are very, very few shorthands that can put what really was going on, and it's history. And the silliness that goes on in the 70s, at the time there were terrible clothes. We didn't just find that out now. They were just awful. And I couldn't imagine why people were wearing them, but that's what they wore. And it doesn't, just the common denominator and the making it's all right for a humor show, but I don't know that Jerry Springer's, and then he's absolutely saying that's what pays the bills, honey. That's what I'm going to do.
are there any sitcoms that you watch on kind of a regular basis? Were you a Seinfeld fan?
Yes, I didn't get some of it, but it worked. And they were doing they were pushing whatever the show about nothing was. I got a lot out of it. More so than some theme shows. I just don't understand at all.
What about Frasier? Do you watch that?
Yeah, I like that. They're always at least putting some references to art and music and good food and good wine and good cigars and whatever. But the common denominator doesn't work for me. I see that on a bus every day, and I'd like to see something a little more. I don't know exactly what, but there should be more history, and not just Hitler history. Let's do history of everything, shall we? And even our own country. I found that I had an ancestor that went back to 1226, and I was trying to find out how the Normans got across, because it's a Norman name. And there's a whole bunch of stuff I don't know anything about. I didn't study it. We studied American history and a little bit of European. But when we know all of that, you know why they're fighting in Bosnia. You don't have to look. The Bosnia started the First World War, and back in the Norman invasion, it wasn't the Saxons were also invading, so the Normans got over. It's stuff that, if you really look at, you can really cut off a lot of the stuff that's happening now. It's not a surprise, because you keep doing it until you do it, you understand it. I think there should be more into history and more
But you
time.
see, all that material doesn't make a good sitcom, so that's why you won't see it.
Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha.
What about the advancements that women have made? I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's very funny because I had my Welsh upbringing, and my mother would not work. During the war, she was in New York, and she volunteered as an air raid warden, volunteered at the police alley, but never, no Rosie the Riveter. She would not work because that was not whatever. But when I had to go to work, there was no question about should I. I had to go to work. I mean, I had to go to work, and I remember going in and saying, I don't care what it is, what the dressing room is like, just tell me the numbers, and where I have to be there and when I have to be back. What I'm to do, I don't care about anything else. And that's not a good thing either. You're not building anything, you're just a money machine. And I really did not like that. But now we started on something.
Well, I wanted to know about how you felt about the fact that women now are being recognized and being given responsible jobs. There are so many women who are in top positions in our industry now who never had that kind of job before.
Well, that's where I was aiming, but I went to a long, dark street.
That's okay. You're allowed.
So now I'm working, and I'm going at full. Now I'm my mother, my mother-in-law, 3 children. of the couple that was there to take care of. I mean, it was like 15 people that were dependent on me as secretary and whatever. Plus, I had this big thing to pay back. So the jobs I took were the money jobs. It was nothing building a career or just nothing. I just took it, and I worked my whatever off. And I wasn't happy about what I was doing at all. That didn't, it was something that I could do. It was the fastest way to make money. I could have done clothes. That would have taken a little longer. I needed immediately. And then the feminists started. They called me up and we'd like you to come and talk to our organization. I said, really? Why? Well, you're a woman, you're doing all of this, you have a family, you have all this. I said, I do it because I have to. I'm looking for a kitchen. You ladies are walking, you're crazy. Nobody can do all this. And then they'd go over and they say, what are you going to talk about? And I said, well, just this. I think you people are absolutely dead wrong. You don't want to do it all. You want to do it half. I need a wife. That's what I need right now. And they would say, then suddenly I would be there and they would cancel me. This is 3 or 4 times they would do this. And I said, no, you can't do this. And in the 70s, I remember getting a divorce in the early 70s. I remember that the judge was saying, well, you wanted it all, you got it all. And I had to pay all this money. And it was just crazy. And
You were paying alimony?
Not alimony, but paying off big contracts that I had made a lot of money on cigars, like big pieces were going out. And I said, those women are nuts. And then I started to say, this is crazy. You're whatever, you only want to have half. Why do you want it all? If a guy can lift a big stone, she should be paid more. But if you can lift that, you better get the same thing. And I was nuts about certain things. Then I could not take on the road with me because I was not known as performer. I was known as the widow Kovacs. Even though I was earning a lot of money, I was the widow Kovacs. So I could not deduct child care because I was the mommy. And if I were on stage and I had somebody, if I had a secretary come to help me do, because I was doing 6 jobs, I might secretly be using her for child care. Now, the guy in the same position could deduct all the child care he wanted. I couldn't. That made me really mad. And I would start to talk about that. And then when this is the same thing, went to my television show. Well, there's the producer, he was not there at all. He has his name on everything. But he said, I was going to sing My Man's Gone Now. I said, not in your life, or in this life. And
boy, that's insensitive.
But it wasn't. It was a vocalese that was 8 minutes long, and like 2 bars had that phrase. I was never singing that song. But if he didn't know enough to say that, then he didn't know what I was talking about in the beginning, so he was left. And then if I'd ask for something, yes, Mr. Adams, and I said, oh, please, we don't have enough time for this. Why don't we? But it was just awful, just awful. And if you couldn't write, of course. And the costume designer, what did I put? Wardrobe by Inky, my real name, because that could possibly be a man, you see. And then I wasn't allowed to put my name on stuff. The vocalese, I had done the arrangement with Peter Math, but it was my arrangement. And somebody else sang it, and it's just, you weren't allowed to say what you could do. And I wasn't agreeing with the ladies with the bra burning. Put it on, honey, you need it. And, okay, so why did they have to be more? If you don't learn to do it half and half, somebody's going to suffer, your kids are going to suffer. So it needs 2 people to do it if you want to really do the top. 2 people working as one, or it's not going to happen.
If you were working today, starting out again, would you continue in the performer area, or would you try to be a producer or do it all?
I would be producing and writing because
You would.
I just had to be a performer because it was the only way to make fast money.
I understand.
It was the fastest way, and I did it, and they got me locked into this nightclub thing, and they wouldn't even, when Joe Mankiewicz called me up to see why I didn't like a script, I said, I didn't get a script from you. He said, they didn't send it. William Morris said that didn't like it, and I was unavailable. He said, well, I'll send it over. He wasn't supposed to call me. I said, no, send it. It was this wonderful trip to Europe, but I had worked with Rex Harrison and whatever, because they didn't want me off that money page. I made $25,000 a week, which was a lot more than I could make in television.
Wow. What advice would you give a performer, somebody just starting out in television now?
Learn the whole business. Learn the overall. Take a course in who does what, so you know who each one is and fitting into this thing. It's not the star, and what did Ava say? And the little people. She said, some girl, she was there on a set, and she said they stopped, and she was combing her hair, and she said, "Oh, sweetheart, you're such a beautiful person. You don't have to be one of the little people." And I think a light missed her by about 2 feet from then on. No, when you work on every job in the thing, you know who gets it on. There can be no panic. There is no panic. Nothing must throw you. My friend Becky, who worked for me as a baby nurse, first she went to Temple and came out to. I said, "There's nothing on television," because she worked and she said, I said, "You can come out." And so she was road manager, took care of whatever. And then she got on Days of Our Life. She produced and she did everything. She said, "I don't know," because she was on the road with me. And she said, "Some of these people that come in from these colleges, one little thing goes wrong and they go, ah, and scream." And she said, because nothing can go wrong. She's been on all the live shows and nothing can go wrong. And you're not dependent on the light man. It's you. If you aren't on, they go home. And if you aren't funny, they go home.
Good point.
And I don't know. I think you have to learn a lot about the business.
You sure did.
I had to. There was no other way. Dance. Do
you think television had any kind of influence on music of today? I mean,
well, I'm not a real expert on popular music. When the Space Age Bachelor Pad stuff came out, it was not on what I would call our best music. They were very, what we used to call in Juilliard, the postcard music. It was very descriptive, but it wasn't very subjective. And that music is easier to do things to, but when you're into subjective music, it's like Elizabeth. I nearly lost my mind. They're playing, like Carmina Burana, they're playing 20th century Ravel, big things, and there was a thing called Elizabethan music that it was pure and whole, and it would be just right for people to pick up on now. It has open fifths and lovely sounds. And they actually, the time where she's dancing without any music is the best time. I don't care if subjectively they're doing her thoughts. They can put anything they want, including a theremin. But when they're dancing and they're not dancing in spandex, then they have no right to put those. The saxophone wasn't even invented until. That drives me nuts. I scream at the music. I'm very bad.
You mentioned a good while back, the Costume Designers Guild. Mm-hmm. And you were influential in getting that started?
I was one of the original. I think there were 12 to 14 of us. Mm-hmm. Ray Agayan.
Why did you do that? Why did you form it?
Well, I hated what some of the people that called themselves designers were trying to put on me. So they always knew that I would always come to a television studio or a movie with my own clothes and my hair done, with the exception of Helen Rose. Helen Rose did beautiful things. And Edith Head would come to my house. She said, "Oh, honey, we'll do it in your back closet." And we did The Best Man from there. I said Jimmy Galanos would be the president's wife. And then we did the Oscar, that terrible picture. Oh, we were laughing, cutting up old things and making floozy things. And I said, "No, I have a ratty ring that's all bad." I mean, we just, the secure designers don't worry you at all. But the ones that are not real secure and not real good, and I don't really choose to have them design for me when I've got something better in my closet.
You mentioned Ray. Who are some of the other top guys you liked?
Oh, who is the guy that,
We mentioned Bob Mackie before.
Bob Mackie, Ray Agayan. Who is the fellow that I had? He's a fabulous designer. They're all Emmy and Oscar winners. And I said, all you have to do is sit in on the meeting, find out what Billy's going to do on the sets, pick anything and I'll wear it. You won't have to fit me. It'll save time. And he always picked the right one. I mean, but there was just from this pool of whatever, buying 30 at a time, it's kind of, but I did know I was never serious about what was the one line that when furs were in, and I had a chinchilla coat because everybody had to have a chinchilla coat in New York at that time. And I didn't like it. It didn't look well on a blonde. It was for a dark-haired lady with her hair pulled back. And I said, I was dragging it across the floor. Somebody said, what? I said, if you can't drag it, you can't afford it. But never seriously. I never took these as, look what I'm wearing. It was just a costume for something that had to be done. I remember one time that they were doing an MGM show. That must have been no, that was Sidney Gilleroff did the best hair. Oh, he could do my hair anytime. It was something else, and I had the hairdresser do the hair, and they didn't like it, and they wanted something done. So we had to go outside. It was at Paramount. What could that have been? And I had to go outside with an umbrella in the rain outside the studio gate with the guy doing my hair.
Because he was non-union.
Because he was non-union.
Yeah.
But I didn't care. I wasn't going to let them do my hair if I didn't like it.
What do you think represents television at its best?
Historic things. They are the ones that you remember, and you try to remember where you were that day and what you did. And it really is right in front of you. When the Vietnam War was on, I couldn't watch it. I would put anything on at dinner time. I just could not watch that.
Too graphic.
Yeah, because, and then it became so usual. That's why I'm afraid of these terrible shows, that it's mediocrity brought to, no, we want to strive for something better. If mediocrity is the answer, why, we better all just go home.
How do you see television in the 21st century? More of the same? Or?
I don't know. I think they have to go, somebody's going to come up with the thing that they did in Private Ryan. There's got to be a show where they have this huge event, and he gave the cameraman free rein to shoot what they wanted. And that's what some of that horrible, but that, I think there has to be more kind of leeway. And even amateur, not the world's funniest videos that are all hooked up, but there are some moments that people could catch in real life that would be valid and saving and special.
Let me ask you, if Ernie had lived, how do you think his career would have unfolded? Do you think he would have?
In his last series, he kept going in the control room, and they kept telling him to get out and do Percy Dye, and he didn't want to be there. He wanted to run this show. It was toys, and he was playing with them. He would have done movies, and if he ever saw my 638 old Mac in there, he would lose his mind. There's a video corner, and I hooked up a VCR to it, and I can scan stuff out, and I have a video printer, and all this. He would never come out. Not that he could do. He would always find the guy. Remember, he'd have his...
Because it was a new toy, right?
A new toy. And he would try this stuff, and he'd have the special effects guy. He'd say, now for this, I need to have this and this and this happen. And then it turns up to, I can't do it. He'd say, sure you can. And he'd go on, and he'd say, no, but you don't understand. He said, you'll think of something. And he'd keep going on. He said, Ernie, I can't. Come on, try, just try. And the guy would always come in the next day. He said, see, you can do it. He wouldn't take no. So those guys worked their tails off because he was asking them to do it and gave them credit when they were through.
And they were getting pride out of it, too.
Pride out of it,
yeah.
Because on a television show, we know that from scratch, when there are 3 people in the room, you better all know what's going on. You better understand how it's going to go out, who is doing this, and what is, but you have to understand that. They're not there to buff your nails, honest to God.
Tell me, how would you like to be remembered?
I don't know. I spent so many years being such a little flower. But I do have an opinion, and that's what you're going to see in my one-woman show. She speaks up.
I can't wait to see it.
It's going to be fun. We're working on it.
We're now going to ask you some questions about some people. This is a thing that we do at the end of
Okay.
all these interviews. And I'll just mention the name to you and just give us your offhand
Okey-doke.
feeling. It can be an opinion, a description, one word, or whatever you want to say.
I do that sometimes.
Frank
I have to
Stanton?
watch myself.
Yes, that's okay. The first one that hits us is Frank Stanton. at
First
CBS.
boss. First boss. Whenever we had something that we wanted to do, we didn't go to agents. We called up Frank. He'd say, I'll meet you for a drink downtown, whatever. We'd go down and we'd tell him what, but everything was like right there. And that's all. We didn't go to, we'd call up and tell the agents what was going to happen.
William Paley.
Well, he was always the god. You know, you never saw Paley unless it was very special. And he was not, the down-home stuff was Frank's. But Paley was a god.
Cloris Leachman.
Cloris, what an outstanding, I'd known her, but I never saw anybody do a person that was so unlike them. And she was inside the skin of Ernie's mother. She was just amazing. And,
So she earned her Academy Award
oh, she was
on the film she did.
just amazing.
Rosalind Russell.
Rosalind was the first big movie star that I met. You said for one word. It's very hard for one word. But she was very insecure about television. And she had a dress that Jimmy Galanos had made her, but since Montboucher was what, anyway, Jimmy gave Galanos the whatever, and she had this white dress, and she wanted to wear it on Ed Sullivan. And she came to me because I'd been doing daily television for all this time. And I said, oh, that's no problem. I forgot Lon Stuckey with the light. Call up Lon, tell him you're wearing a white dress, tell him to backlight the thing and put the thing in the front, and you'll do it. She said, no. I said, no, just call that guy. And she realized that I knew a lot about television. And when I was to do the show, The Wonderful Town, I was going to do it. She was away, but she had approval. And suddenly I wasn't, I was into getting the clothes fitted, and she came back, and I wasn't all right. Something was wrong. And they said...
was this the TV version?
TV version. And she said... no, she wouldn't. And she was in all these meetings. And so I know when Ernie bought me a huge alligator bag, and she loved it. So I saved from my $125 a week, and I bought her a bag for Christmas. That's before. And they said, well, what's the matter with Edie? Don't you? Well, she hasn't turned out well. Why? Oh, and for days, they finally said, if you don't, we're calling her back, and blah, 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 blah. And she said, well, what's wrong with her? He said, I don't know. Who else could go to Mark Cross and buy an alligator bag in bad taste? And I thought, okay. She was terrified. She was a little older, and she was afraid that I knew more about television. But I came from the old school that you helped everybody. That was, and I said, gee, if she'd only asked me, I would have told. I thought it was so sad. I didn't talk to her for years. And finally, she was older, and I thought, well,
Did you make up with her?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Shirley Melner, who was Ernie's last associate producer in New York.
Yes, she was the last associate producer, and I see her in every shot that I'm now looking at. She's in every shot. I think she first started on the Tonight Show. And then she was around a lot, more than I knew at the time.
Okay, we won't say any more.
Okay.
Eddie Hatrack.
Eddie Hatrack was a wonderful, his mother and Ernie's mother were great friends, but Ernie's mother always ended up making somebody mad, so they were always fighting with each other. But Eddie was a schooled musician who was just the best friend that Ernie had.
Joe Behar.
Joe Behar was great, just a great guy, and nothing that Ernie did would amaze him or stop him. You know, he was just real cool, wonderful, good director.
Jack Lemmon.
There's nobody like Jack. He's the kindest, sweetest, most giving. He's just amazing. I just never stop he's just a sweet, sweet, sweet man. Spent Christmas with him last year again.
We talked about Dean Martin, but let's
Dean Martin was one of the funniest human beings I have ever met in my life. He would sit there and those eyes would twinkle. And we hear stories about him at home. He didn't like, at home, he had all these kids, his, hers, and theirs. So the Jeannie Martin didn't know what to do. They'd all come in with the 18-year-olds. So she hired a short order chef. And he never could get in his own house. There were always thousands of kids around. So he was always, can I come over? Yeah, come on over. And he'd sit, and they would call each other, this troop. And they never would say hello. They would say, nothing could be finer than to slip one into 9 in the morning. And they'd say, good one. And then go back. They had all these terrible parodies of song titles. And I was asking Jeannie Martin, I said, she said, we're making lists. And Denise, they're making lists of all these filthy song titles. And they'd do that. They wouldn't say hello. They'd say, yeah, call him back. Okay.
Cute. Billy Wilder.
Billy Wilder was about the brightest man I think I've ever met in my life. And he said he would never do any shows because he said, my accent. I said, Billy, you're funny in any language. He was just absolutely brilliant. It would tell us tales of old Hollywood, excuse me. And we lived next door to him at the beach. So we really got to know him well. And he didn't like kids, but he liked Josh because he said, I can talk to him. And Josh thought he was a very nice man because he didn't like to talk to kids, or it was very, he said, well, no, that kid's different. So he liked, but I just adored Billy. He could make you laugh. He could sit and watch a television show. Because Ernie and I would sit and do the critique. We were terrible. What is she wearing? Why is she doing it? What does he think he's doing? We sit there and yell at the set. And I can't stop doing it. My son says, I have to get out of the room. And when I'm on, it's even worse. What are you doing, you idiot? Put that down. You're not in your light. I yell and scream at it.
We talked about Arthur Godfrey. Is there anything you want to add on him?
No, he just became sort of he didn't bother with any of his old show business friends. But I do remember that Arthur Godfrey was the first one to dress casually. And Ernie's dream was to go on a television show with just a funny shirt on. And in his last specials, he would be in that with that funny old shirt hanging out. And he finally did do that.
Steve Allen.
Steve Allen is, he's into everything. He's written 89 books. He was very good because he was the first one to start that little talk show thing. And he did not do sketches well either. He did just whatever was going on and whatever. They were very friendly. But we didn't understand. But Steve did not know that they were taking it off the air from our show. The writers said Steve had no idea. He thought we came up with this stuff. And then they say anyway, he and Kovacs were good friends.
Merv Griffin, you mentioned him too. Anything you want to add?
Merv is a very smart man. He is, and he also is, he's first an actor. He would rather be up doing some for Cocteau, whatever that he's running, and it belies his mind. He really knows what he's doing.
Dinah Shore.
Dinah was, we worked on the show with her once, and very precise and worked everything, and it was all more studied than I was used to doing. We were used to throwing it at me, and I'd catch it and throw it back. And when we would try to do something like that, either with clothes, I think I told you with Ray, I'd say, why don't we do some Charles James for the Chevy people? And maybe if I don't get it on the air, on the dress, maybe we can make it on the air. And we would put black wool with brown suede, and it was all kind of craziness. And they'd take it off. No, we want a nice pink blue dress. That's one on the cover of TV Guide up there.
We're going to change tapes here.